It's on.
Please rise and salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You thought I was going to mess it up.
Forget it this time.
I know. Because Mr. Wolf and neither Mr. Wolf nor Mr. Kurtz could be here, we're going to have to elect a president pro tem. So I'm going to call the roll to see who is here, and then we'll have nominations for the president pro tem. So, Mrs. Bites, Mr. Kurtz, Mr. Martino's here, Mr. Otis O'Neill,
Here.
Mr. Potts,
Here.
Mr. Rathgeb,
Here.
Mr. Scott,
Here.
Mr. Dasky,
Here.
Mr. Wolf. So, do we have nominations for President Pro Tem?
I'll make a motion for Mr. Martino to be president pro tem.
Second that.
We don't need a second, I was told, but thank you.
I'll make a motion to close the nominations.
I want to nominate Mr. Scott.
In a second, all right, let's move on.
You have experience,
Who's the alternate secretary?
Carol?
Carol.
Carol.
Well, there's no voting tonight, so I'll just leave this here. So, do we need to vote on me since I'm the only nominee?
No.
No,
Okay,
you won.
Congratulations.
thanks.
Winner, winner, chicken.
All right. Procedures for public participation. Because we're in a different place, if everyone that's here as a member of the public would please sign in the back if you haven't done so already. And later on, under public comment, should you address the board, there's a separate sheet in the back for those that want to address the board. Procedures for public participation, prepared statements that are to be read to the board should have a copy presented to the board prior. And all comments will be on the agenda items. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. And when the 3 minutes have ended, you'll be asked to please be seated. Moving on, under announcements, are there any agenda edits? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Well, there was no agenda edits, so there's none. Item 6 is the superintendent's report.
Okay, I have the statement. Okay, I'm going to read a statement for the Board of School Directors. Statement of the Board of School Directors regarding its contract settlement with the Daniel Boone Education Association. On Wednesday, November 9th, 2016, the Board of School Directors held a special meeting in order to consider the report of fact finder William Lowe. Mr. Lowe was assigned by the Pennsylvania Labor Relations Board in order to provide recommendations to the board and the association regarding its impasse in negotiations. The fact-finding process with Mr. Lowe and the association occurred over a 40-day period wherein both parties submitted significant data for his consideration in making his recommendations to the parties. We are pleased to report this evening that both the board and the association approved the recommendations of Mr. Lowe on Wednesday evening. As the result, the parties have now settled its dispute, and the process of updating the collective bargaining agreement with the recommendations of Mr. Lowe has begun. The report provides the recommendations for the parties in a number of areas, including wages, health care, tuition reimbursement, and online learning. The recommendations of the report represent a compromise from the original positions of the parties. The board approved these recommendations, recognizing the need to resolve the bargaining impasse while at the same time balancing the fiscal needs of the district over the short and long term. A copy of the report of the fact finder will be available on the district website beginning tomorrow morning. That's all.
Is there any public comment on the superintendent's report? Do you have anything else you want to discuss? No? Moving on, presentations by board members. There is no secretary's correspondent. Oh, I'm sorry, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting. Ms. Haynes, has Mr. Kurtz told you when he's going to have that yet?
No.
No? Okay, so that's still to be determined. Moving on to presentations, there is no secretary's correspondence. Is there a Berks County Intermediate Unit report?
I was actually absent from the last meeting. However, looking over the correspondence I have from the IU, there was one item of interest that I will report back on. The IU will be implementing a paperless board agenda very shortly. So I believe they approved going forward with that last meeting, and over the next 2 meetings, they're going to be implementing that. So that was something we had discussed here as a board, so I'll let Mr. Mass know what's going on there if he doesn't know already, and maybe that's an option we can pursue as well.
Thank you, Mr. Rathcock. Is there a Berks Career and Technology Board report?
Yes, thank you. We did meet on the 26th, and the tour for last month, we toured horticulture, which is kind of interesting. They actually raise tilapia, and they use the fish waste to provide nutrients for the plants that they grow. And they actually use the plants, some of the produce and the herbs and stuff in the culinary arts program. So at our dinner, last month we had a salad, and some of the greens were from the actual horticultural greenhouses. So it's actually it's kind of an elaborate process. I don't like to think about it too much, but there was a concern with they're working on a plan to determine how to continue the systems during the summer, because if they don't continue them, then they'll have to restart with the baby tilapia every year, and it takes 2 or 3 months to kind of get everything going. So they're trying to find maybe partners throughout the community that'll work in the systems during the summer when the kids are out of school. So
Also the Coral Reef team.
okay, there you go. We also had our audit. There was a clean audit. There were no findings, so we approved that. And then I was also going to share some statistics that Dr. Kraft already shared with us about our students. So that's really all I have to report.
Thank you, Mr. Dusky. Before I even touch on the very brief legislative report, I would like to go on record as saying thank you to the BCTC for the use of this facility. It almost makes you hate going back to our chairs and tables.
Especially the chairs.
And I also want to thank you for the meal, for those that did come earlier and partake of the meal, and for the tour. I took the tour last year, and it's very interesting to see, so thank you. The legislative report, legislatively, nationally, obviously, we have a president-elect. There's been no changes locally that I'm aware of in any of our elected representatives. And as far as actual things that pertain to the school district, the only thing that I think has been resolved, at least I understand is resolved, is the Plan Con money that we're supposed to get. Have we received that yet?
Not yet. It's supposed to be here by December 1st, is the latest report.
But it is resolved.
For the, right. As far as what they owe us, as far as the backlog in the pipeline for the 160 districts, that's still out there.
But what they owe us is 700 and some thousand.
Right around 700,000.
Yeah. Okay.
733.
Pardon?
733.
That's it for the legislative report. Are there any other reports? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the brief reports from the board members? We'll move on to finance. Just a brief discussion. The motion for the refund of $5.82. What was that? A double payment?
No, it's a split. It's when a property actually splits off and then whatever they've paid, they just ended up being refunded.
Okay. So we'll be voting on that next meeting.
Yes.
The LERTA, for those that aren't aware, there's been a LERTA proposed by Amity Township. Mr., pardon?
Approved, right? They approved it, right?
They approved their portion of it. You know, you've got a county, township, and school district portion. Mr. Small, I believe, is going to present the LERTA at the Finance Committee on Wednesday evening.
Yes, actually tomorrow I'm going to email to the entire board a memorandum that came from Fox Rothschild, their assessment of the LERTA in anticipation of our discussion at the Finance Committee meeting on Wednesday night. That, as approved by the township and the county, as I understand it, is a 10-year LERTA. We can do anything we want as far as a term. But the intent now is that we'll present it Wednesday night at the Finance Committee meeting. We'll have it on the agenda for approval on Monday night, and Amity is to have representation there Monday night to answer any questions, and Mr. Sugars will be there as well.
Monday the 21st.
Monday, a week from tonight, correct.
Are there any questions on the LERTA? And the Finance Committee date, as listed here, is Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock. And as we'll see later, that's a joint Finance Facilities Committee meeting. Yes?
Yes.
Is there any public comment on the finance portion of the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to personnel approvals. Are there any questions about the personnel approvals? None. Okay. And we've all already discussed the stipend for the recording secretary.
Could I have a, just unrelated to these, just general personnel questions? Have we, are the two aides, part-time aides for AEC for fourth grade, have they started?
The aides, they have aides, they're working on.
Yeah, the aides that we hired because of the
Extra aides
fourth
that we
grade.
hired,
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They've started?
yes.
yes.
And then, what about the strategic reading teacher that was in sixth grade that moved over to cover fourth grade? Is that position still open?
That person went down to the elementary level, and I believe they had overcrowded, and I believe it was second grade, if my recollection is correct. That person took care of that position there. That happened a long time ago. That was over the summer.
But was that position filled?
No, that's not. That person was moved based upon what we had to do to get our class sizes down below.
Okay, so then they lost the strategic reading
Well,
teacher?
it was actually a spot that was extra, that was going to be extra help for that year due to the class size. They were going to be needed for next year over at the middle school because of the way the classroom was working out. So really that teacher over there at middle school was extra help for those kids. So it really wasn't a position before that. So,
If you look at the enrollment bubble, the middle school sixth grade this year was lower
Yeah,
than what it's going to be next year. Next year, fifth grade is going to make sixth grade higher than it is this year.
yeah, I guess what I was saying is if we took that position to fill an open teacher spot, was that,
so they're going to have to slide a teacher back to the middle school next year. Because we're on
Basically,
do you know what I'm saying? Like we have.
This
like,
was an
call it what
August
you want, but
discussion.
Did somebody
Yeah.
move to fill out of one role to fill another? Did we backfill that role in any capacity?
No,
no.
That FTE, that person?
no, we kept the same number of FTEs and just utilized them someplace else where there's a greater need.
So our current staffing would say that we're not -1.
We're flat,
We're flat. So somewhere else that position was filled, another place of need.
yes.
Okay.
What we try to do is utilize our current staff without having to bring someone in and lower, because the one position that we talked about reducing was that
Yeah,
position.
that feature was actually on the cutting block, but the board kept that spot back in,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
in
yeah.
June, June we did that?
Correct.
Yeah, back then.
That's why the last time I had asked about it, we didn't have an answer. I just wanted to make sure we filled it, that's all.
But Mr. Scott brings up a good point. We haven't had an enrollment report in a while. When will that be coming out?
We have a child accounting secretary, and I'll bring that information forward to us. We'll get it to you next one.
Okay. Any other questions about personnel? Any public comment about personnel? Seeing none, we'll move on to programs. We have copies of the minutes available from the voting meeting of October 24th and the special voting meeting of November 9th. So we'll vote on that next Monday evening. Is there any public comment on the minutes? I see 31 policies here, and without Mrs. Bites, I can't address any of them. Is there any comment or questions about the
I had
policies, knowing that I can't answer them?
Well, there's one question I guess we should have. So I remember the first readings are under A are new ones. The ones under B for the second readings, I remember, especially we had the first reading, didn't we pull a couple of them or one of them? I can't remember which one it was. I just want to make sure it was.
I thought we did.
And I can't remember whether was it on the list or not. So I just want to make sure that one was actually was it being rewritten. And so.
Yeah, without Mrs. Bites here to address
So
that, I'm not
when
sure.
we vote on it, because then we'll get on the attachment, we'll get the full read after the policies, right? So we
Yes.
can actually see what it has on there, and yeah. So.
I can actually post them to board docs if you wanted me to, because I think Kathy McNeely is the policy, she does the agenda. She has them in electronic form, and I can get them out on board docs by tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Okay. That might have been my fault and oversight, I didn't send them. I think they're in the board folder, but I didn't tell Scott to put them up there. That might have been my fault.
And are all the glitches in the computer system fixed now?
No, still working on
So
it.
will they be able to post this?
They should be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
If it's-
special link, you can go into board docs, is my understanding. I think somebody here asked Scott about it.
board docs fine.
Yeah, board docs you can get
And
into.
so I think email worked, there's like 3 things that worked okay, even though the website was down.
And the next policy review committee meeting is November 21st at 6 o'clock. Has that changed, Ms. Haynes?
I think it has changed, right?
She just emailed me today that she's gonna do
29th.
the 29th. I believe it was.
Yeah, it's the same as the transportation.
Same as the transit, we're having it in
I don't remember.
conjunction
Yeah, I
with-
don't know if she's doing.
So the
before or
policy
after.
review committee meeting, the next one will be November 29th at 6 p.m.
I'm not sure what time, because the transportation committee meeting is at 6, so I don't know if she's doing it before or after. But she's doing it, she's having them back to back. My understanding is that the meetings will be held back to back.
Usually they're, you would think after because of people working, but I'll have to check with her by Monday. Is there any public comment on policy, even though we really didn't tell you very much? Moving on to facilities. One item here is a snow removal bid, and I see some people I think may be interested. Is there anything to discuss on the snow removal bid?
It is, we advertised for the bid. We received one bid from Halter Landscaping. It's a 3-year contract, 3-year bid. Be moving forward for approval on that a week from tonight.
So just so you understand, if you're the sole bid, it probably looks good. But our voting meeting is next Monday, so that's when it'll be official, is we'll vote on it then.
Okay. In the meantime, let's say if we did get snow, what's the
mean, I know,
Good question.
because I'm just like,
In the meantime, if we get snow,
I gotta order material, I gotta get salt in, I mean, it's a lot of, just,
We'll make it happen.
Well, let's hope we don't get snow. It
I
has
want to,
happened,
I
it has
agree,
happened, but
yeah.
I'm keeping my fingers.
yeah, the forecast for the coming week is still in the upper 50s, so we shouldn't. But
Now that you mentioned it.
Melt process.
it'll be,
Casey did tell me to go to the facilities meeting on Wednesday, that definitely I should go to that, right?
you
I'll
can't-
be honest, I mean, I'm a facilities chair.
Okay.
Since there's one bid, I don't know that we'll be discussing a lot. The only thing I would ask for the business office and or Casey is to just look at what we were paying our previous, and see if they're in the ballpark. I mean,
I think
you
we
know,
already
if
did
it's,
that.
I mean, if it's $40 an hour more than what we were paying, maybe we would want to rethink about bidding. But if it's in that same realm, I don't see what there is to discuss, you know?
Well,
So,
there would be more logistical stuff at that meeting about, where we park and how we want the grounds cleared. That would come up in that meeting too. We would talk about what our people do and what's expected.
Wednesday night?
Wednesday night?
Or would you do that more at like a staff meeting?
That's
At the committee.
primarily, that's addressed to a large degree in the bid itself. The GCA contract calls for snow removal to the curb,
Well, here you go.
and they're responsible for the driveways and the roadways. You did a walkthrough with Mr.
I
Blanca,
did, yeah, so I was at the,
and so you know
Yeah.
what you're responsible for.
right, correct.
And
There was a
you'll
couple
work in
things,
his
like I
direction.
wanted to know if we could have a couple tracks of loads of salt at the middle school and at the high school, tarp it up, keep it out in a corner or something like that, just to,
Yeah.
that way we don't have to keep running.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, we'll work that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wednesday night's meeting should be a packed agenda, so unless there's,
So to me, that's more logistical issues that
Yeah.
could get worked out with Casey or at a staff meeting, or we could have a separate meeting, maybe one afternoon or morning
Yeah.
or something if we needed to meet with you guys, but I would think we just work that out with Casey.
Okay.
but since you came tonight, is there anything you'd like to tell us about Harder Landscaping?
I mean, we've done the mowing for the high school, Monocacy, and BEC this year. Now I guess now we're working for GCA services technically, but, we have the equipment, we have the manpower, vehicles to do it, take care of everything, so.
Good.
Make sure all the schools are up and rolling as fast as we can get them done.
How's the interaction with GCA?
They're all right. I struggle sometimes with them, just trying to make sure guys are there to let us into the building, we got another courtyard, stuff like that, get into the stadium, do kind of that. Communication is not too great, especially with Doug Moran. He's not really, he calls me, but he doesn't really communicate very well.
So if you reach out to him, does he get right back to you?
No. I was talking to Billy Pip, who's more, I guess, the regional guy today, and he's great with me. But he's not on site, so he doesn't know really he asks me more along the lines of what's going on.
Okay, we got a week change.
It's like a recurring theme.
I just say, I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, but you gotta stop sugarcoating your report.
I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I
Get
just,
right to the point.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, this is our first year with the outsourcing too, so we need that feedback, the unbiased feedback. I mean, you have no skin in the game to say if he's doing great or if they're doing great or not, so I appreciate that anyway, so.
Thank you, seriously. No, because if we don't know, then we can't even attempt to fix it. Is there any public comment on facilities? The next meeting, as listed and as discussed, will be Wednesday evening with the Finance Committee. Moving on to transportation, Mr. Lucas O'Neill.
We had a Transportation Committee meeting last Thursday. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss, theoretically, the purpose of the meeting was to discuss the RFP results, which I think I emailed you all. Essentially, we received two submissions, one from the current contractors, New Roads and Klein, and another from First Student. Lauren, because of the fact-finding situation, the business office was busy and hasn't really had time to review
carefully the RFP submissions that we've received. So because of that, we weren't able to discuss it to the in depth as much as we would like. So we decided that we would rule on the RFP. That the Transportation Committee would, at the meeting scheduled for the 29th, come up with a recommendation to bring to the full board as to which RFP proposal which party we would like to move forward with. So we have assured the contractors, they were there last Thursday, and we assured them that the committee would make a recommendation on the 29th, and that at the voting meeting in December, they would know where things stand, one way or the other. So that was the first thing that we discussed. Also, Mr. Spores from the high school came and made us aware of a couple of issues that have been going on at the high school that we didn't know about. Essentially, he suggested that we have more cameras in the buses. The current contract just requires, it's just 3 buses that are required, is that right, Wayne?
Three from each contractor.
3 from each contractor, okay. So,
Float between buses.
right, and they float between buses. So at this point in time, not all of the buses have cameras. So it's possible that there could be an incident on a bus that obviously there's no video to review because there are no cameras on the buses. So the current version of the RFP, which of course can still be negotiated, the current version of the RFP did say we want cameras on all the buses, but the specifics as to the cameras will be negotiated going forward. So once again, at the meeting on the 29th, the committee will discuss how many cameras we think is the best situation for us to make sure that we have A, video coverage on all the buses, and B, to make sure that the video that we have is usable in that it maximizes the coverage area on the bus. Having said that, there are no perfect solutions, right? If the kids are smart enough, if they ever get access to the video, they're going to figure out where the blind spots are, and it's not possible to actually have enough. Without having a camera literally in every bus seat, there wouldn't be any way to actually have a camera set up that is going to cover every possible every potentiality on the bus. But like I said, at the meeting on the 29th, one of the agenda items will be for the committee to discuss what we think the best practice should be with regard to the buses. We'll make sure that we get that into the RFP going forward, and that that will be. So we'll make sure we're covered, and we'll make sure that there's that there are cameras on all the buses. So at least there'll be some video to review in every case, whether it captures every incident or not. Will remain to be seen. So we got that feedback from Mr. Spores. We also got a question about, he asked whether the bus drivers have the mandatory reporting training, which in discussion with the contractors who were there, we found out that they have the same 3-hour, I think it's an online class that the current staff has. So they get the same mandatory reporting training that our current staff does. And like I said, based on a conversation that Mr. Spores had and an incident, he just wanted to make sure that the drivers got that training, and the contractors did confirm that they receive the same training that the other staff gets.
Transpinder.
Oh yeah, thank you. We also, at the meeting on Thursday, the board made a recommendation that we will be the committee made a recommendation to utilize TransFinder as our routing software going forward. That will be, we'll be bringing that to the board at the voting meeting. I'm not sure, is the intention to do that next week?
We can do that, since you presented it to me.
Right. So essentially, based on we essentially chose the TransFinder software based on the presentation that their representative gave to us. His presentation was far and away the most balanced. And by balanced, I mean that as opposed to concentrating on what the software could do, which he did, and the other presenters did that as well, TransFinder's representative also made a point of saying, all of us are going to offer you one-button solutions. You know, you input the stops and the students and whatnot, and it will generate routes for you. But that's not going to be the most effective routes, regardless what the software generates, because there's going to be things that the people involved in the transportation of the kids every day know that the software doesn't. So his presentation was balanced, and then it said, hey, there's a lot of good software out there, but it's more important that you know what it does and what it doesn't do and how to use it, rather than just pressing a button, blindly following what the software generates and thinking that that's going to have you in the best shape.
And that's different than the software that's currently being used, right?
That's correct. We currently use BusTrax, and that contract is up December 30th, I believe.
Well, it renews in November this
Right.
month
Okay.
for another year.
Right.
So we're going to be running piggyback. We'll be using that under the current contract, current program, but as soon as we get approval for TransFinder, then we're going to be piggybacking, comparing through the spring, and then July 1 we'll officially go on TransFinder.
Right. We also got feedback from several other school districts about their experience that are using TransFinder, more about their experience working with the customer service personnel, how responsive they are, how helpful they've been, and the feedback is overwhelmingly positive. We also got feedback from the contractors themselves, who also agree that TransFinder was the best solution. So that's what the committee has recommended, and as Mr. Small mentioned, for a while here, we will be, at some point, we will be running the two software packages in parallel, because the current regime is going to continue to use BusTrax. But of course, whoever staff, if any of us, there will be training on the new software that will include administrative personnel, whoever the new transportation coordinator will be, and any of you who are interested in taking part of that training. I know that I myself am going to try to make myself available for the training. So the issue now is there's still some details to be worked out with regard to where that transportation coordinator ultimately, whether they're going to be our employee or the contractors, and those details have not yet been worked out, but I think we need to do that fairly quickly, because the representative from TransFinder suggested that it will take a few months to get all the data into the system and get them ready to go, get the training ready to go for us. So it's not it's not something that you call today and say we want the training next week and they can get everything done. It's a pretty in-depth process. So we need to get those details ironed out so that we can get that done. But I believe that Mr. Small has at least indicated to TransFinder that pending full board approval, that our intention is to go with them, so they at least know where things stand at this point.
And for the record, and correct me if I'm wrong, and for Ms. LaRive from the press, the bus contract we're still operating under our current contract. The bus contract that we're going to vote on will be for beginning the 17-18 school year.
That's correct.
If, so assuming we go the software, what's the tentative plan for when you realign bus routes based on the new software?
In all likelihood, routing would be changed in the summer.
Okay, so
Okay,
we're
so
gonna finish the
this
year out
year-
wherever we're doing.
Exactly.
You create a mess with the parents, the kids, and the bus drivers trying to change it mid-year.
That's why I'm asking.
Logistically, it would be infeasible to make major route changes during the school
Do you
year.
really think there'll be many changes? Common sense wise, what he was saying in the meeting, obviously there's
That's a,
a scenario in place and obviously it could stay the same.
yeah, that's an excellent question, Mr.
So-
Spencer. I don't have
So-
I would say I don't have a good sense of whether the software will recommend wholesale changes or whether it will largely recommend what we have now.
Right.
So are we planning to do like a comparison just to see, or?
Absolutely. We absolutely will do a comparison and then evaluate if we can figure out why the new software makes suggestions. It's possible that the new software will have some, will make some recommendations that make sense and
Is it-
make things more efficient for us.
Is it dynamic enough where you could say, recommend, based on the region that your area you're covering, to recommend how many stops you should have?
I think,
I think that determines your stop as far as how many you collect at that.
Yeah, I mean, like,
that
so
stop.
how do we get to the
Yeah.
number of stops
It
we have in
gives-
our current?
that's within our discretion. So if we, essentially the routing is, you tell the software where the students live and where
Yeah.
the stops are, and then it generates the routes based on the current stop. So we have the flexibility to reduce stop numbers if we are interested in doing that.
So, but you would have to know, like, you would have to tell it to, like, it's not necessarily to make suggestions on how to maximize, like, because I know we
That's
have
correct.
places where,
No,
bus
Is it-
stops,
oh,
four
right,
houses
it's
down,
more of
bus
a
stops
safety.
again.
That's
four
correct.
houses
All
down,
we hear
bus-
is the bus rides are too long, and I mean, my contention is that one of the reasons why they're too long is that there's too many stops.
That's
Like,
correct.
why am I get it, like, you're on a rural road, and it's not safe for a kid, you gotta pick one kid up at their house. That I totally get, and we have a good number of those.
I think we
But
tried that
you
years
go through a
ago.
neighborhood, and I'm picking up kids every 2 blocks, just seems
Yeah.
like counterproductive. Like, you wanna know, I know, you know our situation in our
Yeah.
neighborhood, it's like, I'm sitting there looking around, I can see 3 stops from my front door.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
I have
part
had,
of that, and, it depends on the concentration of where the kids live. If you had like an apartment complex, you could pick up 40 kids at one stop.
right.
Agreed.
But if you get into these other neighborhoods, and now, I forget what the criteria is for how far a student can walk, assuming there's sidewalks.
A mile, isn't it?
Is it a mile?
No, it's a half mile.
I thought it was a half mile.
We don't have to offer busing
a half
unless
mile
they
to a
walk
bus stop.
at least a certain
It's
amount.
not-
Well, hold
They're talking about distance to the,
I know,
distance to
it
the
used to be
stop,
a-
not to the school.
I'm saying, like,
But if we offer buses, then we have to offer buses to
Yes.
all of them.
Right, but we
So-
don't have to stop 16 times and then.
No, and that's what I was gonna
Kids can walk to the
say.
end of a block.
We
or
I think we have
walk
too
far.
many areas, I think, where we don't make them walk.
Yeah.
right,
I,
that's what I'm saying.
I mean, I think that the plan, at least as I envision it, and this has not yet been discussed thoroughly by the Transportation Committee, but my expectation would be that the new transportation coordinator, whoever that should be, will, obviously, they need to be on staff, they need to be here and employed by the time that the training for the new software package happens, because they need to get trained by the professional trainers, not by us. And that will give them time to work with Ron Smith, the current transportation coordinator, and while he's doing the day-to-day operations and they're getting a handle on what the day-to-day operations would be, it might give them time to play with the new software, do some test routing, evaluate what it would look like if we removed 20% of the stops in certain neighborhoods where there's high concentration, and we make the kids walk a little further, we reduce the number of stops, and it, like you said, it makes the bus runs faster because the bus isn't stopping as many times. Right, so I think having overlap for some period of 2017 before Ron is gone allows the new coordinator the opportunity to learn, at least to be exposed to all the institutional knowledge that Ron has picked up in his 8 years as a transportation coordinator, and to give them the opportunity to work independently on some operational improvements that we haven't had the manpower or the resources to look into satisfactorily.
There's actually a whole lot that has to go into this, bless you.
Thank you.
There's a whole lot that has to go into this. We've got to configure what happens with the plan to phase out grades over at BEC, which changes your bus configuration. This hasn't been,
I'm just asking if.
no, but I'm saying, this
Tool has
hasn't
the
been discussed yet, but
capabilities,
I don't like these double bus runs that we have, where kids are getting on a bus a half hour ahead of time because they got to get to school early to sit there for a half hour, and then they sit at school a half hour after school, waiting for their bus. That's ludicrous, and it's going to cost money to eliminate it, but
With the routing software, routing is very unique to the individual. Right now, if we all left and went to the high school, we'd probably take 3, 4, 5 different ways. Okay, so the routing, the person who does the routing needs to know the area that they're routing around. They need to know that this street in Birdsboro is a little too thin, people park on that side of the road, and that bus can't get through. So driving in our car, we may say, you know what, why doesn't the bus go up that way and make a left? Well, you know what, there's always 3 cars parked at that corner that the bus can't get around. Or on a snowy day, that's going to be a hassle. Or that family over there doesn't get along with that family across the street, so there are different stops. When we put too many children at one stop, there are problems. They're spread out. I think we live all in the same area. In my neighborhood, each of the corners is a stop. And now in our area, if we say, okay, that's now the neighborhood stop, I bet most parents would walk to it. Because I see, when I leave in the morning at 7, I see parents with the strollers walking their little ones to that stop, and they all talk, and then the kids get on. In certain areas, if you put more than 6 kids at a stop, you might have a problem. You do. So we have to space them out. Not change the bus, but having them sit there unobserved from the porch, that a lot of the parents like to do, there are problems. So when you get 10, 12, 15 kids at a stop, yeah, you have some issues.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying, and I'm not advocating that we go in and look for ways to reduce stops. I'm asking 2 questions. Does the software have a recommendation feature that tells you how many stops there are? And 2, if they do, or if we were to reduce stops, would it impact the ride time that everyone seems to be so upset about? That's all I'm saying.
I highly doubt it would change very much, a noticeable amount on the ride time. However, if you go in to put in Jeep from here to the high school, MapQuest is probably going to tell you 4 different ways to get there. And you can click on it, and you can pick the route you want to take.
Yeah.
but
No tolls, no lights, no hills, no trees, whatever. It'll probably offer those functions, but then you start tweaking it because the person who's doing the routing knows specifics about the neighborhood and the community that it's serving. So our mileage isn't going to change that much. The ride time might change a few minutes. The things that are being done now at the schools are going to affect more of the ride times with the shuttle buses, and things like that are going to affect the ride time a lot more than not turning left on that street and picking up 2 less kids. Because it's a slow moving thing. It's one stop. Then there's probably about 7, 8, 9 stops on a bus. That's about it.
A lot more than that.
It depends. I've seen some with 16 to 18.
Well, 16, 18. Well, it's still heading in that direction, so they route it in that direction.
The one presentation I saw from one of these companies, one of the parameters you could put into the computer was limiting the bus ride to 45 minutes.
Yeah, they all have that.
Yeah.
So that, if anything, could help cut down on the long bus ride.
They
Could.
also, all of the software has the ability to change the distance to the allowable walking distance to a bus stop. Okay, so TransFinder, which is the software package that we've recommended, it could, if we put in our current bus stops, right, it knows how far each kid, and a roster of who's at what stop, it knows how far each child is walking to get to the stop that we currently have. If you tell it, I want to change the maximum walking distance from whatever, 100 yards to a quarter of a mile, and say what bus stops would you eliminate based on that, it will tell you that. And then you have the opportunity
There you
to evaluate them.
Question answered.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hours.
15 minutes.
You can plug in.
Pretty
that.
much anything that you can think of at this point. The software, the people designing the software at this point have so much experience with it that they've been asked almost every question that can be asked, right? So they have functionality to evaluate options that, pretty much any option that you can think of. So like I said, we have that possibility. And then, like I said, we can just you can look at what it says and the stops that it says you could cut out, and then decide whether you think it's worth it or not.
Mr. Repko, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, it was way back with the cameras. When you're negotiating with whomever you're negotiating, one of the problems that I have had with the middle school is the request for the video and how long it takes to get there. So there's no immediacy or urgency to responding to things sometimes because the difficulty of pulling the video out of whichever particular system they have and getting it to arrive. You know, Mr. Coakley from Klein has been doing a Google, sending it via Google. And he said it's just clunky, and I don't have any. I haven't had a whole lot of requests for video this year, but it's been a problem for like 3 years.
Right. I mean, I think that's what Mr. Repko is referring to as a cost-benefit trade-off, right? The systems that allow you to download the video faster, to have quicker access to the video, are going to be costlier. So the board just needs to take we just need to make a cost-benefit analysis on how much is the immediacy worth to us, because my understanding, and I have limited experience with it, but I've been led to believe that the price increases significantly to allow very quick access to the video.
In some of the cases, if you can't respond in a number of days, you lose the opportunity to make a significant change.
Well, I think it's overnight, the current system, right? Is that, Wayne, is that?
The system that we have, we physically have to remove the hard drive from the camera in the bus, and then download it and send it.
Okay. But do you agree that overnight turnaround is generally?
That's probably average. I mean, if we're able, we like to try to do it immediately. That's just not always practical.
Right. So I do think that there are systems that, as opposed to, right, they're wired.
As soon as they pull into the terminal, they can pull that data. Right.
Exactly. But then it's a cost issue.
Costly.
That was not a complaint to anybody. It's clunky.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Your feedback is appreciated, and like I said, we're aware of it, and like I said, we haven't had detailed discussions at this point as to what we think is best for our needs.
Any public comment on the Transportation Committee report? Mr. Augustinian, I want to thank you for the longest committee report since Mr. Basil was on the board.
There's a lot going on. You're welcome.
Moving on to old business. I don't know of any old business. Is there any that
I just had a question about,
you always do?
to Mr. Harris, if we had talked a few weeks back about policy or the recommendations we had in the handbooks for changes to students riding buses, and I think we talked about hearing more closely, and I just wanted to know how that's been going.
I haven't received any calls. So I guess on the principal level, they're saying, no, we're following policy.
And is Dane getting 12 and 14 kids in his office every night like he
I
anticipated?
think people adjust.
I've seen on the principal's reports that Monocacy seems to get returns, I think it was Monocacy.
Well,
Well,
Monocacy
that's the K, what's the
is
K?
K through. Yeah, that happens all the time. Parents aren't there.
Yeah, they can't leave the kids off
Now
the bus.
what happens with, for that, is it kind of like a 3 strikes and you're out, or does it just like,
No.
they're never there,
No, generally the driver, I believe, would make a call radio back, and then they contact the school. Melanie or someone would make a call home, say, hey, the bus was there, where are you? Make contact either the driver at some point may be able to turn around or drive back to the school, and they make arrangements for their parents to pick up.
No, I just mean like, do you find that it's consistently different parents, or is it repeat offenders? And
Usually once and then it's done.
okay.
It's
That's
a
why
huge
if we have a repeat
inconvenience.
offender, how do we handle that? Because it's not fair if you consistently have a couple people that aren't.
Typically, it's not more than once or twice and then it's one at a time. Come back to their.
Well, that's what I mean. You should
Since Mr. Scott had a question, I'll put a question out too. So, not the pre-K counts, but our other program that we started with the IU.
The wraparound.
Yeah, how was that? How many kids?
I don't know, that's in your
I
building.
have one in the morning, one in the afternoon. One signed up for before and after care so far.
How many were we hoping to?
More than one.
But remember, we wanted it to start before school.
Right. We
So-
had the problem of
That
actually getting
was-
up and running.
Right, that was.
So
the
most
problem.
parents already had
Yes.
that all taken care of.
We also have another student who will be in the program for about 2 weeks and then off, a military family, who just needs it when they need it. And hopefully next year, with all the advertising that we'll be planning to do, we'll have many more students in the program.
Yeah, that wasn't us, that was the IU.
Yeah.
Thinking they could get it up and running faster
Right,
than what they could, and
licenses
they
and all that.
couldn't do it.
Under new business, I just want to make a comment basically for Mr. Scott and Mr. Lucas O'Neill. You got on the board last December. The organization meeting is the first meeting in December again, and that was like your first meeting last year. We'll be voting on board president and board treasurer and other board positions, so just keep in mind if you're interested. I haven't not talked to Mr. Wolf about would he like to be president again next year or anything like that, so you'll be called upon to nominate and or accept nominations. So that'll be coming up the first meeting in December. Is there any other new business? Seeing none, is there any public comment on anything? If the members of the public that are here, if you haven't signed in the back, please do so before you leave. We'd appreciate it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.